Good morning. Welcome to a Tuesday, September 10th. I had to look. 7:46 in the morning. We're going to talk a lot about Tropical Storm Francine, soon to be a hurricane. And of course, we'll have your forecast for the rest of the lower 48 as well through the weekend. That's what we do here at the Weather Mic, and really appreciate you being here. We hit 100 subscribers. Yes, appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you'd like to, you know where the button is. And a like would be helpful as well. And throw in some comments. Let me know what you think, what you don't like, what you might like, what you'd like to see. I even take requests. So anyway, thank you for all that. Let's check out the watches and warnings around the country. Still hot in Southern California. We're still looking at some excessive heat warnings here along the Colorado River deserts of Southern California and even just off the coast. So lingering heat here. Then we go into Nevada, other parts of Arizona, Utah. It's more wind, red flag warnings here up into Idaho as well. Now, one thing I haven't talked about, my dad's been complaining, but I don't blame him, up in northwest Montana, it's been a lot of smoke. And I saw on Facebook too, a lot of smoke in Idaho. So just some fires burning up there. Air quality is not great. So hopefully that's clearing up for you. Then we go to the thumb of Michigan with some fog this morning. Is that what that is? Yeah, dense fog advisory there. Heat advisory for southern Florida. And then that brings us to our main event. So we're looking at tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings, hurricane watches, tropical storm watches, and some flood watches, all to do with what is now Tropical Storm Francine, soon to be Hurricane Francine, making a beeline, it looks like, for Louisiana. That's the current forecast in our weather spotlight. All right. It's 7 o'clock this morning. You can see it off the coast of Mexico there. And we've got the tropical storm winds painted on here too, in that little orange, dark yellow. So that's the field of the tropical storm force winds. Francine itself, the highest winds are 60 miles an hour. So we're expected to be hurricane strength later today, 74 miles an hour. Once we hit that, that's a hurricane. And top winds is right now expected at 100 miles an hour before it makes landfall. So not a major hurricane, but maybe a category 2 by the time it makes landfall. Right now, best forecast is Louisiana, and that's where we see our hurricane warnings. We've got tropical storm watches mainly along the Texas coast. When you have a landfalling hurricane, a lot of times you'll spin up tornadoes from those outer bands. And so this is tomorrow's tornado probability. And so we're looking at the eastern half of Louisiana into southern Mississippi, parts of Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. The brown is the 5%, and the green is the 2%. But we could see some tornadoes spawned from Hurricane Francine as it approaches land. Here are your wind fields, the probability of tropical storm forced winds. Just to let you know, so along the Texas Gulf Coast right now, unless Francine goes a little further to the west, we're not expecting widespread tropical storm force winds here. There's a 20 to 40% chance from the light green into the yellow. Now, as you get to Houston and, Galveston, Houston, towards Louisiana, your chances go up for the tropical storm force winds, and it's like 100% for Louisiana. But I also wanted to show inland, right? So as Hurricane Francine hits Louisiana and then starts to weaken, it's still going to be tropical storm strength as it goes into Mississippi. So you could see tropical storm force winds well inland into Mississippi and northern Louisiana. So that is something to watch out for, because combined with the heavy rain, you could see some trees down, some power outages here. So that's not good and something to look out for. Our storm surge could see 5 to 10 feet, the worst of it, through most of the Louisiana coast. You get up to Lake Pontchartrain and New Orleans, it's more 2 to 4 inches. But still, that can, even 2 to 4 inches can cause a lot of problems 5 to 10 obviously worse, and then 1 to 3 mainly along the Texas Gulf Coast until you start getting east of Houston. The rain for Francine, this is for the entire event. So we're looking, the worst of it, central Louisiana coast, anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of rain here. So a foot of rain in a day, that's a lot of rain. There's not much, it can't run off fast enough. So flooding problems guaranteed here. 6 to 8 inches of rain for New Orleans expected. You get to the 4 to 6s in the yellow, and that goes all the way up into Mississippi, pretty much to Jackson, even further north, maybe Lake Grenada, Water Valley. That's where my grandparents used to live. 4 to 6 inches here. And then you get into the green, the dark green's 2 to 4. So, and that's all the way up into Illinois and Kentucky and Nashville, 2 to 4 inches of rain from this event. Little Rock, you're right on the edge of that. So this Francine's going to be felt pretty far and wide. So let's go to the rest of the country and look at your surface. And we'll turn our eyes to the Pacific Northwest with a system moving in. So we have showers and rain for Western Oregon, Western Washington. That gets more scattered as you get into Idaho and Utah, Colorado, Wyoming. A little bit of rain, and it's on the radar right now here in Iowa. That's also South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. So a little bit of rain, not a whole lot, but some. And then, of course, the southeast, that's where we're watching. There's a stationary front there to focus showers today. Tropical storm Francine moving northward at around 5 miles an hour, and that'll pick up speed. I forgot to mention, making landfall looks like tomorrow sometime in Louisiana. And that's where we see our heavy rain flash flooding possible. You think? Highs today. Still hot in the desert southwest. Come on, man. What's today's like day 107 in a row over 100 for Phoenix, shattering their old record of like 70. So it's kind of crazy. Tucson, however, they've had above average days over 100, but not near the record or anything. So Tucson is a little bit cooler than the heat island of Phoenix, little LA, as they call it. Lake Havasu, 110. Anyway, you get further up the coast. It's still warm in Eugene is at 81, 78 for Portland. So cooling off here as the system moves into the northwest. The plains, central northern plains, we're in the 90s. And that's starting to sneak into the Midwest a little bit, but still 80s here in Iowa. For Minnesota, turning into 70s for parts of Wisconsin into Michigan. Then we're back to the 80s for the rest of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, 91 for Nashville and into the southeast, 80s to near 90 in Florida, mid 80s, mid-Atlantic 70s, up into the northeast. Lows tomorrow morning. Yeah, the northeast is very comfortable, 40s and 50s here. Very nice. Mid-50s, mid-Atlantic into the Ohio Valley, 60s to start the day southeast, 70s for parts of Texas, 60s in the plains, transitioning back to 50s northern plains, and then into the Rockies, 40s and 50s. A lot of 50s for the for the northwest, and into California. And then, of course, the hot stuff will be in the desert southwest. Surface for tomorrow, here comes Hurricane Francine. With our severe storms possible, our tornadoes possible with those outer bands, heavy rain, flash flooding possible well into Mississippi, Arkansas, parts of Alabama, the Florida Panhandle. So just a mess here with Francine, as you would expect. Critical fire weather possible in Nevada and Utah. So be careful here. We have seen quite a few fires still burning in the west. But then just north of that is our mixed precipitation. So rain mixed with snow or even snow for Yellowstone up into Montana, parts of Idaho, and even some heavy rain flash flooding up here into the mountains of Montana, the Mission Mountains on up into, say, Glacier National Park. So that system making itself felt in the Pacific Northwest tomorrow. Highs tomorrow, cooler in the northwest behind that system. So a lot of 60s here with elevation, 70s, lower elevations. And then you get down into the desert southwest. Hot, not quite as hot, still hot. 90s for the plains, 80s for Texas, 70s rain cooled in Louisiana and Mississippi with a lot of wind. Hurricane Francine turning into Tropical Storm Francine once it makes landfall. 80s for the Midwest and 70s for the Northeast. We've already talked about the 48 hours of rain, or the Francine event of rain, and of course that's where our heavy rain is expected the next 2 days, but also in the Northwest. Could see up to an inch, maybe a little more for western Oregon, southwestern Washington, and then also into Montana, especially in the mountains. We could see close to 2 inches of rain in some areas. Looking ahead to Thursday, here's Tropical Storm Francine, centered over, what is that, Vicksburg, Mississippi, with that big shield of rain, heavy rain, flash flooding possible, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, of course, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, with scattered storms around that. I just want to say showers and storms at the same time it comes out, storms. Pacific Northwest, scattered rain up here. Our snow went away. Highs on Thursday. Rain cooled Francine, 70s for the lower Mississippi River Valley. Transitioning back to 80s in the Midwest, even 90 for Columbus, Ohio. 80s Iowa, Minnesota, but we do see still 80s North Dakota, even some 90s in South Dakota, and then some 90s for West Texas. Then we get into the Northwest, nice and cool behind that system, especially in the mountains, 40s and 50s, but very pleasant here. And again, a little bit cooler for the desert Southwest. Phoenix, only 105. How about that? Florida, you're looking at 80s. All right, this is Thursday's highs. Now let's take a look at the European in motion here. We can see here is Francine. Moving right up along the Texas, paralleling the Texas coast, making a beeline for Louisiana, and then moving into Mississippi, and then raining itself out as it gets towards Memphis, maybe a little further north into Paducah, Kentucky. And so this is, let's see where this goes through. Thursday, Friday. Oh, sorry about that. They always come in pairs. It is ragweed season, of course. All right, so Hurricane Francine should be making landfall tomorrow sometime with everything that we've talked about with Francine. And then our Pacific Northwest storm moving into the Northwest and bringing some showers and cooler air here. And really those are the two main events on our future radar. We always like to do the forecast through the weekend. That's what the weather consultants told me back in my TV weather days. Everyone wants to know what the weekend weather is going to be like. So here you go. Mid to upper 90s for Texas. And Louisiana starting to warm up as the hurricane heads out. So, but 80s, more 80s as you head into the southeast. Rain cooled 70s now for Tennessee into Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, even some 70s here in Iowa up into Wisconsin, Minnesota. Very pleasant, I would say, for the Pacific Northwest, 70s for western Oregon, up and down the Willamette Valley, up to Seattle. Cooler, of course, with elevation. Not as hot for the desert Southwest, Phoenix, 99. So you're going to break your streak of 100s eventually, so maybe Sunday. And you get up into New England, pretty warm. I mean, some 80s here, even mid-Atlantic into the low to mid-80s. Highs on Sunday, pretty similar for the rest, for the country, maybe a tad bit warmer for the Central Plains, upper 80s to near 90 here. Lots of 80s, even a few 70s into the Midwest. And the Pacific Northwest just looks great. This is the place to be. 6 to 10 temps. Our best chances of above average temperatures up in the northern plains into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. Now remember, as we get further into fall, our average temperatures are falling, so above average temperatures are not as high as summertime. You get it. All right, for the West Coast, below average temperatures, our best bet here. Precipitation wise, this does not include Francine. This is 6 to 10 days. So this is the 15th through the 19th, and the Pacific Northwest, the big winner with your best chance of precipitation. But really, most of the country, either average or above average rainfall is the probabilities here. Exceptions would be Louisiana, who needs to dry out after Francine, and then also up in the northeast parts of the Great Lakes, drier than average. All right, there's your whirlwind tour of the forecast through the weekend, and of course, lots on Francine. We'll keep you posted as we go, of course, and we'll see you again tomorrow right here on the Weather Mic.